The dynamic duo.
Tihei mauri ora. Ke a tātou te hunga ora, e puta nei ki te whai au ki te ao malo. Kātou hāpakatau ki te rangi runga nei, kātou hāpakatau ko te papa e takatone. Kātou hāpakatau ko te mātuku mai raroto. Ko i e ruki hea manawa pau raso. Ko i e ruki hea manawa pau waho. Whakatīna ki a tīna te more i huaiki. E pupu ano hoki e wawa ano hoki. Tārawa tū ki te rangi. Ko e ke tangara ke panuku. Whānu, whānu. Hana mai te toki. Haumi e hui e. Rai e. Tīmatanga koro e tautaka ngā mihi tō tātou matu i te rangi. Nāna ngā mea katoa. Haere tonu ngā mihi tō tātou kingi Māori a kingi tūhei tia.
Kia ora. Kia ora.
E noho mai na nātoro tapu ona mātua tūpona. E kaupapa whakahana-hara i wāguru nā iwi o te moti. Hoki whakamuri ngā whakaaro ki te wā. I hui tahi ai ngā rangatira o ngā iwi o te motu ki rungi i te tehi o ngā marae o te arawa. Ara, orotea nā ti tūwhare toa i pūkawa. Ko te take, nā te rau patu hie wā tātou whenua Māori. Ka tika me tū he kingi Māori mō tātou, nai tātou te iwi Māori. Ana, ko riro ia pōtatau te whero, te tuatahi o ngā kingi. E ki ho, he ki iho ki tō tātou kuini Māori a te ātarangi kāhu. Nāna ko tāna tama a tū hei chia, tō tātou ki ngi Māori tēnei rā, tēnei ka mihi ati ki ai. Me tāna ariki makau a te atawhai, mā rāwa tamariki mokopuna, te puhi ariki a nā wai hono i te pō, nā tau ngā tamariki mokopuna o te kingitanga pai Māori. O reira piki mai rā, kake mai rā, ho mai te wāru ki ahau. Papa ki tuara ngā tai ki tāro te reinga, ka pō kao watea. Nō reira kia koutou he tau nei. Koutou ngā uri. O ngā hapu e tōru o Ngāti Pukau e. O Ngāti Urunga Te Rangi. Ngāti Tai o Tū. Ngāti Tikahu. Koutou anō hoki o te whai pānga o Ngāti Pukau e a Pukero o Nuawhata. Koutou anō hoki o wāhia tūhau rangi o te whakarewarewa, te whenua e tau nei, tau mai harama. Haramai koutou, ki tēnei hui ātau. Kāri ki te tātou, i ngā tau e toru kimuri. Nā te mate urutā, nā te mate korona. Kāre mātau e taia, te koroati ki a koutou ngā iwi, e pāniki ngā huatanga toa, e pāniki tēnei tānga te puia e hora nei. Nō reira, anei mātou, nā memo te ropu kaitiaki. O mātou, mihi ati nei ki a koutou, ko tai mai ki te whakarongo, ki ngā huatanga toa, e pāniki a mātou i rotu i tēnei tō mātou. Nō reira harumai. Me ngā whakaara nui ki a rātau, ko nunumi ki tua te ara. Mai te timatanga o tēnei hikoi, a iwi, ki te karauna. Rātau ko wehe atu, anei tātou e mihi atu e taki atu ki a rātau ko wehe atu. Tātou e whakahua, he ana ki te whakahua kei makere te tehi kiwa. Engari, e ngā mate, koutou, noho mai na rā ta hai tāpuka a iwa matua te kore. Anei, mātou, o iwi mihi ate nei ki a koutou i tēnei rā. Tai noa ki ngā tini huhua mate o te wā, te parekura o Ngāti Piki au i tēnei rā. Te tehi o ngā kraua arama karaka tinirau o Ngāti Uenuku Kōpako o Ngāti Rangi Te Aorere. Ara, te hunonga o Ngāti Tunohopu, o Ngāti Rangi Tūnaeke, a Ellie Morgan, ko wehe atu i ngā rā tata nei. Rātau, ngā mate o tēnei wā, e te hare turu ngā mihi nā taki ki a rātau. Nō reire, ngā mate ko taki hea koutou i te au i te pō. Te pō i te au haere. Haere a tūra. Nō reira ki a koutou e tau nei haramai. Whakaronga mai ki ngā tanako ngā kōru i tēnei rā. Anei tā mātou chairman Derek Shaw, hei kanohi, hei kai hau tū, o mātou ngā mema, o ngā puari kaitiaki, o te puia, o tēnei taonga nōhoki, nā taonga tuku iho o Aotearoa e tau nei. Kei mua tonu i tō tātou tūpura aro nui, te aro nui a nua te pūpuke, ana tōna mara nōhoki a roto o peo, anei tātou e tau nei tēnei whare tapare a te puia e tau nei, nō reira, waiho ngā kōruri ko nā, mihi whakatau tēnei ki a kou te katoa, tēnā koutou. Tēnā koutou, kia ora tātou katoa. Kāre te aroa ki te korori a tapu. E wai ake ana i rā kui te nau mai e hine ka ta ta e ka hoi ta tau e kōrero anga nui ka hopu ka iho te kupu ka tua Apiti hono tai tā hono, lātou te kumatika lātou apiti hono tai tā hono. Tātou te hungolo kia tātou, tēnā koutou, kia ora tātou katoa, ka hu. Kei noe tātā. Hono rei ki te atu e maungalo ngō kirungi te mata te whenua. E pokaaro pai kua tangata katoa. Nō rei e pā e tō mātou matu i te rangi. Whakamanana mātou i a koe te kaihanga te tīmatanga. Whakamutu ngā mea katoa. Anei mātou i rati ki a koe ka tai mai ki a mātou i rotu i tēnei tō mātou hui. Arahi tia mai manaki a mai. Ia mātou e tūtuki ai te kaupapa kei mui a mātou. Ko i karai tuku tō mātou ariki. Amen. Kia ora.
Kia ora tātou katoa, morena. Welcome to this Puia annual general meeting, this first AGM. And I find it an irony, actually, it's sort of a contradiction in terms for the people who have been here intergenerationally. So this is the first AGM of Puia, and this organisation has, if you like, traded on the people in this room over many generations, and it's fantastic to be here today to be able to celebrate the past 3 years of Puia, and you'll hear a little bit more about what we've been involved in with the board over the past that period. Just want to acknowledge the mihi karakia from Dr. Ken Kennedy, distinguished kaumātua member of our board, and shortly I'm going to ask each member of the board to introduce themselves, and we've got 2 board members online, Alec Wilson and Tupara Morrison, so hopefully they can sort of join with us at some stage. Behind me there you'll see the agenda for our program, which is relatively straightforward. Can I just check in that everybody has registered today? So there should be a registration sheet somewhere that people we've got it there, that's good. Josie, so thank you. In terms of our program, well, firstly from a health and safety perspective, because health and safety is important, we will just follow our team here, our management team, and assemble out in the front car park. There's an assembly area out there if we need to. So just follow our Tim and the team from here. Apologies, we have an apology from Waruri Waru. Are there other apologies? Trish will be taking sort of minutes from our meeting. If there's any apologies, further apologies, if you can let Trish know around that. In terms of our protocols for the AGM, we have 4 voting delegates, and I just want to confirm who those delegates are, just so people are aware in the room who those delegates are. So from our 3 shareholders. So I guess just for the meeting, so everybody's aware of those people. So Puia AGM Trust, the delegate is Malcolm. Probably good, Malcolm, just to select. You put your hand up. HTK Puia Trust, delegate. Can you just say your name? What up? Motu. Okay. And the Whakarewa Trust, Dr. Ken and Donna Hall. So, got to thank you. So those are our voting delegates, and those are the people that are eligible to vote today. I'm going to go through the Chair's report and tell you a little bit about what we've been involved in. Following that, Tim will provide a Chief Executive's report. Peter Allport will then go through the financial reports. We then have a very positive item, which is headed Financial Distribution to Limited Partners. I'm sure everybody will enjoy that item on the agenda. Confirmation of the auditor and closing karakia. And then lunch in Pātaka Kai around about 12 o'clock today. If anybody needs to sort of stand up and stretch their legs for any reason, please feel free to do so. There is kai and a cup of tea at the back of the room as well. So I'll just essentially run through my report. It's relatively straightforward, I guess, in the sense of it's been a very, very tough 3 years with COVID. And I guess in many ways the business couldn't have been handed over in a more challenging period, right sort of, if you like, in the middle of COVID. And that was an incredibly stressful period for everybody involved, particularly for our staff and management team and the decisions that needed to be made around that. And I guess we reflect back, it's easy to forget just over 3 years ago, we went into a lockdown period and we had hugely challenging trading conditions that changed almost daily. At one point, I think we were looking to welcome every single person and coming onto the site with a red carpet welcome and a cup of tea on arrival. And can I just say, actually, one of the key things for us, prior to COVID, we had 92% of our business was international. But the business survived because of the people in this room, because of the loyalty that people had to this place, and particularly our food and beverage operations here, and that was really important. And one of the lessons for us in COVID is not to forget who the people that supported this business are, and I just want to acknowledge everybody here today. It was a really tough period, and there was a lot of courage and commitment, particularly shown by the board and through our management team through that, and that was particularly sort of challenging. We had clear information and advice about what we needed to do, and I think the board was particularly grounded and understood a lot of those different elements. I'm just going to get the board members now to introduce themselves. Maybe Donna, if you're happy to start from you. No. Everybody knows you? Start the other end. Okay. I'm not sure, Alec. Maybe we'll get Alec and Tupara if you can hear us. So I think it's important, really, I want to acknowledge the board at this particular point around this journey that we've been on. So Tupara, Alec, I'm not sure if you can hear us. We'll try and get you there virtually.
Kia ora koutou, Tupara Morrison, Director Representative for HTK Trust.
Wilson, Director for the 3A.
Good, Alec. I think you're frozen in time there. I can see him on the screen. I think probably there wouldn't be a person in this room that wouldn't know Alec or Tupara, I would think, actually. A lot of experience and skills that they have in governance and particularly around business development and multi-business development. So maybe we'll just, Peter, are you happy to move around that way? Is that appropriate?
Yeah. Seeing Donna ducked for cover. Peter Allport. I'm an appointee. I was appointed to the board by Wahia o Tuarangi o Whakarewarewa Trust. I have a long business career, over 55 years of active in commercial entities and businesses throughout New Zealand and offshore. Some of the sort of highlights of my career was I was a senior, I was the managing director of one of the key trading divisions for the Goodman Group in the early days when we grew the company from, when I started with the company in 1981, our profit that year was 14 million dollars, and when I left 8 years later, the profit was over 220 million. I went from that and went into my own business, a consulting business. I ended up chairing the Commerce Commission for a while, chaired Tourism New Zealand for a number of years, was a Crown appointed trustee on the Crown Forest Rentals Trust, and so I have quite a wide and varied business experience. Perhaps one of the highlights was I spent 25 years going up and down from New Zealand to Mongolia, helping the Mongolian government and community coming out of 72 years of communist government, and transferring from that to a market economy and a democratic form of government, and that's one of the real highlights, and I will cherish that experience forever. Thank you.
Thanks, Peter.
Morena koutou. Called David Himsalaho. I think most people here, so I'll just do a very brief rundown. So I'm here as a representative of Puia AGM Trust, and I'm our chair, Malcolm. I got a commercial law background. I think, as most of you know, I was a commercial lawyer, securities, stocks and bonds for 30 years. I'm also now a director on a number of other companies, but here in Rotorua and around the country, I'm Deputy Chair of Lotto NZ, or I had to point out to Donna, not the distribution arm, the money making arm. So you can follow it up with them. And I've been on the public trust and a couple of other things. I just really want to quickly say that, just to the Chair's point, this is a vastly different meeting than the meeting we had 3 years ago. 3 years ago, most of us on the board were in here talking to all the staff saying that we had to let about 75% of them go. That was incredibly tough. So we're much more delighted to be here today. I think what that's shown, though, the resilience of the iwi groups coming together. Be honest, we weren't sure, but it's actually really worked out. We're doing a really good job together, and I'm proud to be part of it. As you see later on, there's a distribution discussion later on, and so we're proud to be here for that. I mean, if there wasn't that, some of us might be on Zoom, but yeah, good to see you all. Kia ora.
Morena koutou, Malcolm Short, Chair of Pukero o Ruapata for quite some time now, and also a local business person. I lived my life mostly in Rotorua, and our whānau family are all from here, still live and work here, and I've been very supportive of my time with Te Puia. It is the second up. I was on the board some 20 years ago and have noticed the vast changes on my return to the premises, and also the huge change following the pandemic, how we've had to reinvent ourselves here, and the team have done a marvellous job of that, of which you'll hear more as we go through the agenda. So with that, very proud to stand here in front of you. As David said, 3 years ago we could have been hiding. Cheers.
Morena, George Hictonaho. I've been very privileged to represent Wahio for the last 3 years since vesting on this board. Just a bit of my background. I sort of came into tourism about 20 years ago as Chief Executive of Tourism New Zealand. My chair at the time was Mr. Allport, and I headed up that organisation for 10 years. I suppose one of the things that Peter and I are quite proud of is we launched the 100% Pure campaign for New Zealand, which still goes today and is considered to be the top international branding campaign in tourism in the world. So we hope to bring that expertise here. Since being involved with Tourism New Zealand, I've been mainly in directorships of various tourism companies. I chair 2 regional tourism organisations, both Hawke's Bay and Kapiti Coast. I'm a director of Kapiti Island Nature Tours, who won Maori Tourism Business of the Year last year, but also I chair Weta Workshop, and we have a couple of tourism businesses, both the Weta Cave in Wellington and obviously Unleashed in Auckland. And in the spare time we help Hobbiton out a bit as well. So anyway, hey, it's great to be here, and I think, as people have said, this is a very important occasion for us as directors. to reflect back to you the work we've been done through a very difficult time, but a result that we're all proud of. So, kapa.
Kia ora tata. Hara tonu ngā mihi kia koutou. Ko Kennedy te whanga Kennedy taku ingoa. E uri no ngā pū manoa e maru o Te Arawa. E kaumātua no hoki o Te Arawa mai Maketū ki Tongariro. Pakeke mai au ngā pāpāringa torotu iti. Ki te ai henga, i araki ai a kahu wata mō moe. I rungi I tōku marae te pauna manua Ngāti Inikura. Rara te tūnui o tōku tūpuna hau mai tawhiti, I o Taramana. Engari ko taku kuia a mihi taurangi ranga whenua I whānau mai te riu o te whakarewarewa. Te take, ka noho mai au, I rungi I tēnei rōpū, hei chairmana po wāhia tūhaurangi o whakarewarewa. He mema no hoki o te pai motu hake o Te Arawa, whakarau ora ai, tō tātou reo Māori, puri noa te rohe te wairiki. Ko hau anō hoki he mema o te kaunihera Māori o Te Arawa. I whakarite ai, e te ture o te kāwanatanga. Ko tahi rau, ko tahi manu I warau, ono te kaumārua, tērā ture, e whakai te kāwanatanga mō ngā whanaketanga Māori puri no te motu, ko hau te tehi o ngā mema o tērā rōpua nō hoki, ko hau te tia mana o te kaunihera kono matua, o Ngāti Rangi Te Aorere, ko hau anō hoki, he mema o te kōtahitanga o Te Arawa, ala, ko Te Arawa Fishery tērā, ko hau anō hoki he mema o tērā rōpu, o reira, tēnā puta.
Kia ora tātou katoa. I chose to speak last year because I had an idea that some of the speakers going ahead of me wouldn't explain a lot about themselves to the room, and I wanted the opportunity to fill in some of the gaps. So I'll begin with Peter Morford, who is a nomination from Wāhia Tūhaurangi o Whakarewarewa. He gave you a bit of an outline of his background, but the fact that he spent that time in Mongolia, what he did say is while he was there, he built an airline in Mongolia, got the thing flying, literally while the planes were in the air. Peter was organising the runway. So his training by trade is engineering, but he's sort of a Mr. MacGyver. If there's a problem, you can rely on Peter to find a way to fix it. When we were looking to put a team together to come onto this very important board for Wāhia, I knew we didn't have the sort of skills in our own family yet that were going to be needed for this board. So we looked around the country and around the world, and Peter was an obvious choice to approach. Apart from anything else, I knew that he's descended from the Heberley line that were based as whalers and pirates in the top of the South Island. So I figured you put that with him and us, we'll be a perfect combination. So it's not an accident Peter's here. He had the sort of skill that we felt Wāhia needed to have sitting at a table that it was going to have to make some very major decisions about the development of tourism in this business. Peter, in turn, was pretty keen that I should meet with George Higton, who's here. George's background is very broad, he explained some of it, but I do know that the work he has done with Hobbitville and with Jackson has led the country. I understand that that outfit is still ahead of us in numbers and tourism. Well, we're going to fix that. But we're very lucky to have George give his time to help out in the management of this particular business. So I'm really very pleased to follow both, to speak to the enormous background in tourism, the industry, that these two nominations brought to the table. And then there's Ken and me, well, you know us, and all our amiable, sweet ways and why we're here. But I also wanted to say that it's been pretty good working on this board. I've been hugely impressed with how it works. Tupara and David are outstanding. Whakauē is very lucky. It has a good ability coming through, and what Whakauē does well is it supports its own membership into these roles. We haven't quite developed that skill to that extent in Wāhia, but we'll get there. And when we do get there, we'll be better than anyone. Before I close, I did want to just say, our chair, Alec Shaw, was known to everybody around this table except me. Derek Shaw was known to everyone around the table except me. Probably, Derek, I'd have been the last one to have said yes. It's no secret I favoured very heavily Sir Harawira Gardner, but for all sorts of reasons couldn't get him through, and I was told that Derek would do a sterling job. I want to say in front of all of the family here who support Dr. Ken and I, how very delighted I am to support your nomination to remain as the chair. Steady set of hands, a very steady set of hands, living locally, knows the industry, knows the business, and most of all knows how to walk very neutrally between two lines. So we're very lucky to have this fabulous board here, and good meeting today, people. There's good news to report, and thank you.
Well done. Everything you've said, and we do have a very experienced board, huge capability, huge depth, and great board, and good board for very challenging times, which I'll just keep moving through, I guess, around that. And businesses, and this is a taonga in Te Arawa, taonga nationally and internationally, are really organic entities, and they need to live and breathe. And one of the things the board did was kept this business open right through some of the sort of challenging times. And I really would just like to acknowledge the support from the government, particularly around our kura. That was absolutely essential for us, because historically we had used commercial revenues for cultural perpetuation, which actually made this organisation probably one of the most successful of its type globally around that. We took a loan from the government as well, which you'll be pleased to know has been paid back in full. We haven't had to utilise that, and received appropriate wage subsidies as similar to other businesses. But just really want to acknowledge that support from the Crown with our schools, because that was really fundamental, and a lot of work was done by board members and others around securing that funding for us, which was really a lifeline for the organisation. Okay. Nick's just saying we might need to restart the presentation, so I'll just keep talking as Nick's moving that through. So we're going to report on the 3 financial years in one. So I suppose that's good news in the sense that you don't have to sit through 3 AGMs, because AGMs sometimes are hot and cold affairs for people. So we're going to report back on the 3 years in terms of what we've done over that period. And I guess just some of the challenges we've had along the way, and Tim will go into a little bit more detail around some of those, particularly moving forward, because one of the things about, it's great to look back, we also need to look forward to see what the environment will look like and some of the things we need to be doing as part of that. We did have some technical issues around the vesting, around getting our opening sort of balances, if you like, in the business, which was a challenge for us. Peter might comment a little bit further about that in the future. But the trading conditions has been, as we know, the big challenge through the COVID period, and the continual resetting and understanding what those were, because it was not only really a lock, sort of open or close. It was actually trying to manage with a restricted number of people through the business as well in terms of some of those numbers, so that was hugely sort of challenging as well. But I just really can't emphasise enough the courage of our staff, of the board, and just really want to acknowledge those staff who had been very loyal members of this organisation for many years who we lost through COVID. That was very, very difficult. We needed to live our values, and we did. We got quite a few of those people jobs through our HR, which was absolutely fantastic. We could awhi those members of our teams, and many of those people have come back since. So just in terms of, you can see there, the vesting happened in July 2020, so three years ago. And one of the big things that the board did was look at the sort of, as outlined here, the bridge to the future, setting up a COVID response committee. Now, we were really, really fortunate that we had people like George Hickton, who headed that committee, who just had huge depth of understanding around the tourism market and where we sat in the market and the nature of our product here and where it sort of sat in the market and what we could do to actually sort of enhance that. And that was a huge thing for us. That committee has ceased to exist because we've sort of finished that, but allowed us to, if you like, to reposition the business. And Tim will talk a little bit more about that later on. It was, at times a sort of question of survival, and we did look at the nature of, if we close the business, what would that look like? And I'm very, very pleased to say that by keeping the business open, I think as the markets have returned, we've been able to position ourselves much more quickly around reactivation of those markets because we've had presence in the market right through this period. And the 21-22 highlights, again, really surviving. Again, tough conditions, the COVID committee working again. A lot of work was done around the domestic market. That we were sort of about 8% prior to COVID, and just again want to acknowledge all of our teams' work in that area. There was a lot of work, and historically, we haven't been as strong in the domestic market as we could have been, and that's something that we need to look at for the future. But the key thing was really just making sure when those borders reopened that we were well positioned to generate good numbers of people, but at a higher yield for the business. So less people, higher yield, which actually means we're actually working smarter, not harder around that. Just want to acknowledge in particular, I guess, Pātaka Kai functions and events, very, very successful over that period. In fact, I made a joke, I think, at a board meeting, that it was Puia Bar and Grill, I think, at one point, but again, just want to acknowledge, again, the people in this room that really supported that. It was absolutely fantastic. And we've got to make sure we don't lose the lessons from COVID, that in terms of looking after our people here. It was all hands on deck. I know, I think everybody in the business, Tim, became a barista. In fact, I was talking to one of our staff one day and said, Derek, I can make coffee now. I don't even drink the stuff, but I'm a barista, So those multiple skill sets, and I think that's part of, I guess in terms of particularly our build back, just that ongoing development we need to be involved with our staff here. 22, 23, really this has been the big year that you'll hear more about in the future. But really positive in terms of what the industry was looking at, and opening the borders in July last year was absolutely fantastic. The change really with our new operating model, which is guided only in the valley, and that has been it's a more authentic product, it's a more immersive product. We get much more positive feedback about that, and actually from a health and safety perspective, it means we can actually manage our people a lot better within our environment, if you like. And you can see the sort of increase in visitor numbers, which have just been absolutely outstanding, and the increase in staff up to 114 FTEs at 31 March. I think we're probably close, I think, Stevie, to about 150 staff now on site, which is absolutely sort of fantastic. So a lot of challenges through that, and it's easy to sort of gloss over some of those, but I'm going to get Tim's going to do his CE report now and touch on some of those things. So kia ora. So that's my sort of quick, if you like, snapshot update, and just again really want to acknowledge the work of the board through that period and the work of Tim and our leadership team and all of our staff that contributed so much to this organisation over that. So kia ora tātou katoa. Thank you very much.
Kia ora tātou, nau mai o haere mai. He tangata, he tangata, he tangata. Those words, for me, say a lot about the last 3 years, but also probably speak more to what we're doing here today and the business we are today. I want to, before I start, acknowledge the board and all the support management have had over the last 3 years as we've gone through an incredibly tough time. This for us has been, I've been involved in tourism for 30 odd years, probably a little bit the same as George, and I don't think anyone involved in tourism that knew it reasonably well had ever encountered anything like this before. And from having a business that was attracting around 500,000 people a year through your gates to having 92% of that taken away, with literally no warning, is a challenge that I hope I never have to face again in my career. And I'm sure I echo the feelings of other tourism businesses. Some of you who Watu and James and others who are involved in managing tourism operations. It was a significant hit, and we were making decisions in rapid time about what the future would look like, but more about the future of some people who'd been incredibly supportive and loyal to our organisation over a long period of time. And we can't look back at the last 3 years and ignore that. There were a lot of people that were affected by the changes we had to make, but for the business to survive, unfortunately, we had to make them. And I want to acknowledge my management team, most of who are in the room today, for the support through that period, and also for the decisions we made through that period. I often say that people don't see us sometimes arguing and disagreeing, because we often do that inside management team meetings and in my office, but we weren't dealing with something that was normal. We all had different emotions, and we didn't know quite what was going to happen. We were up and down. We were closing the business, opening the business. We were writing off vast amounts of kai as it dated, because all of a sudden we had another lockdown and meant that kai we had purchased for the restaurant functions had to be destroyed or sent somewhere else for alternative use. So nothing was normal. It wasn't normal at all, and we all went through vastly different emotions as we tracked our way through it. We disagreed, but ultimately we agreed that we wanted to keep the business up and operating, and that was probably the core decision we made. That we didn't want to lose some of the momentum, and at least we wanted to be here for Kiwis if that's all we did have. But we also knew we had an amazing restaurant. The story I want to tell a little bit about this morning is some of those last 3 years, but also about a future-focused build-back, given that we're now iwi-owned, given that there's a whole lot of new health and safety factors that we've got to take into account, and environmental and sustainability issues and matters that we've got to deal with probably a little bit more up front in the future. Overarching all that, though, is our people. This operation can't do what it does if we don't have quality people delivering the experiences and delivering the kai and delivering everything else that we have to do. Quality tutors, quality people heading our schools. That's fundamental to it. So we can have all these wonderful things, but at the end of the day, it's people. I just want to talk about some, I'm calling them fast facts, just little things that may be of interest to you, and things that, I asked some of the team, some of the highlights, if they were to give you some fast facts, what would they be? So, New Zealand Maori Arts and Crafts Institute Act of 1963, that was passed into law 60 years ago. So, technically 60 years ago, the organisation, as it sort of is today, was created. In 1967, the first wānanga was established on the site for Karirako. The New Zealand Maori Arts and Crafts Vesting Act replaced the original act in July 2020. So we now operate with an Act of Parliament, despite the vast difference we've got in our operational structure. So we're no longer a Crown entity. We are very much a limited partnership and a business. So staffing-wise, 150 staff currently, 80% are Māori. We've got, at any one time, we've got 15 to 25 taurira on scholarship programs with us, studying in our three kura. We're pretty much up to full speed with that again now. It was a little bit, sort of drifted off a little bit during the COVID period, but we're pretty much operating in that. So just so everyone's familiar with that, when I say scholarships, the organisation pays each student studying with us $450 per week to study with the organisation. It's quite a unique form of learning where the organisation is contributing to that. We used to do that pre-COVID with just using the operational surpluses of the business, but we've had government support through COVID to keep that going. 60% of our guiding team are from within the iwi ownership areas. We've probably got a few more that haven't identified as those areas, but we're trying to always keep that up. And as a general philosophy within the business, we're obviously trying to keep as many people that are closely aligned to the ownership of the business employed with us. That's a really important philosophy to us, but we've also got to make sure we've got the right skills to deliver the experiences we have to deliver and the learning we have to deliver. We operate a no debt model. So we don't have any overdrafts, we don't have any loans, we don't owe anybody anything. We have no debt. Anything that was taken as a loan from the government during COVID has all been paid back. We never used it, so we survived without it. And we're really proud of that fact, and that's the way we operate the business. It's on a no debt model, and we try and keep it in that position the whole time. Our revenues touched in the last financial year, we got up to around 15 million. And in the current financial year that we're in, if we get the growth we're projecting we will get, we'll be back up to around, probably in the vicinity of that $22, $23 million mark. That's where we'll end up. And Peter will talk a little bit more about the finances as we go along. We also own 42% of Waimangu, which is another tourism business. It's probably recovered at a faster percentage rate than we have post-COVID and is trading very well. And Derek's our representative on the board of Waimangu. Just from a natural environment and maintenance point of view, if we were closed, i.e. we closed the whole operation down, had no staff, other than probably some maintenance staff, it would still cost us about $2.5 million to operate this business every year. That's just the costs in the ground. To keep the buildings up to standard, to maintain everything, it would cost us about that. Our annual insurance bill, just to give you an idea of that, is around $500,000 a year now, and has climbed on the back of the likes of Whakaari, where insurance companies are looking at big buildings and big facilities on geothermal sites and putting their prices up accordingly based on risk. We manage over 50 plus hectares. We operate in a relatively small part of that, but obviously the other parts of the valley, the more southern parts, are areas that we have to manage and maintain tracks and things in those areas. And probably one of the really cool things over the last 3 years is we've seen a real uptick in the geothermal activity around the site. And some of you that keep an eye on this will be noticing that Puhutu is erupting a lot more regularly, a lot more strongly than it ever has before, which is an amazing sign. But we're also seeing eruptions from other dormant or geothermal activities that were sort of in abeyance. And so the geysers in and around the front of Puhutu, like Mahanga, are playing really regularly now. And that's a really good sign for the future. Obviously, all of us would love to see Waikite come back at some point in time. So just in the 12 months to April, which isn't quite the financial year, 153,000 visitors went through the operation again. We were really pleased with that grow back. I don't think we could have grown back a lot quicker. We simply didn't have the people we needed to deliver all the experiences, and it certainly was a challenge getting through that season. I'm going to talk we've got acronyms in the tourism sector. FIT is not FIT, or GIT is not GIT. We call them FIT, Free Independent Travellers, or Group Independent Travellers. And so traditionally this business has been 30% FIT, and 70% GIT. We're seeing quite a shift in that, and the business strategy is based around that shift. And in the 12 months we had in the last financial year, we're seeing that it level up a lot more. So we're seeing that reduce on the group side and increase on the FIT side. We get a large amount of our visitors from overseas, as you know. We have got, in the last 12 months, we've had very significant support from Australians, from Americans, North Americans, Canadians, and really strong support out of the UK markets. They're the ones that have come back fast. Asia hasn't come back as quickly as other parts of the world, and particularly China hasn't come back at anywhere near the rate, simply because they were closed a lot longer. They weren't able to travel pretty much until the tail end of last year, and also a lot of the air capacity hadn't been built back from China into other countries, which is starting to get built back now. And also there was some quite tricky issues to do with diplomacy around Australia. A lot of the Australian visitors that we used to get to Te Puia used to go to New Zealand and Australia in the same trip. And Australia, because they've been naughty diplomatically, had those groups prevented from going into Australia. So if they're not going to Australia, they're not coming to Aotearoa, New Zealand, and of course then we don't see as many of them coming through Te Puia. Pre-COVID, we had over 180,000 Chinese visiting Te Puia every year, and we're hoping to get a reasonable share of that market back, and that's certainly on the cards. But it's been a slow market out of the block. The other market that's used to be really strong for us in the shoulder season was the Indian market. The Indian market, unfortunately, hasn't come back as quickly as we had hoped, partly on the back of Immigration New Zealand not issuing visas efficiently and effectively enough for outbound travel out of India, and that's prevented some real, some of that shoulder season business we expected to get out of there. Just in terms of Manahiri going forward, I was reporting to the board yesterday, we're holding bookings for around 100,000 visitors next season, so we're about 3 months out from the real start of next season. We're holding significant orders already, and we're seeing that grow daily. And we also know that we get a high proportion of free independent travellers on the back of that. So all in all, it should be quite a good season coming up. Derek has referred to it, and other board members have already touched on it. We changed our commercial strategy quite significantly in COVID. We have moved this operation from a volume operation into a much higher value trading operation, so higher yielding trading operation. And those that are close to the financials of it know that that strategy is already paying dividends. So while we may have not have recovered the visitor numbers to the same degree, the actual yields and spend is significantly higher than we were getting per average visitor pre-COVID. Part of that is that the Chinese market, because of the volume, you gave away a bit more on price, and we haven't had the Chinese back, so we haven't seen it equalise, but the Chinese are probably not going to get the same price that they got pre-COVID. Actually, probably won't, as definitely won't. And so we'll see that correct itself in time. We're really trying to think of all of those things that we need in the build back that are future focused, that we are stuff that we need to have in place and ready to go to ensure that we're delivering the experiences we promise the market. We did see a lot of pent-up demand this season. Every indication is there's still pent-up demand out there in the global market for New Zealand, and we'd expect that to roll through. And as I touched on just before, the shoulder season, those markets like China and India that we expected to see flourish a bit more, there were reasons why they perhaps didn't, but we think they'll correct themselves as we go forward, as the likes of Immigration New Zealand and the like get their operations all back into check again. Like all businesses trying to get themselves restarted or starting up, and just businesses generally, attracting and building back a team of skilled, experienced staff was incredibly tough. I can't be more thankful of all the work that everyone did. Denise, where are you, Denise? Down the back. Denise is an amazing waitress. If you ever want to have your dinner spilt all over you and have your drink spilt over the front of you, Denise was a waitress for one day. I sacked her. She was everyone, literally everyone. In the management team, everyone had to work the cafes, had to work the restaurants just to get by day after day. We just didn't have enough people. And what that led to is us having, especially in Patakakai, we had a lovely conflict occurring. We'd taken a whole lot of bookings pre the borders reopened, so our restaurant was looking really, really busy, and for about 4 months at the tail end of last year. Then all of a sudden, the borders reopened, and we had this other wave coming at us. So we had competition for space, competition for kai like never before, and we were having to really manage that, and we were really challenged by it. And in the end, we had to put some caps on nightly demand, in particular, simply because we just didn't have enough. We just didn't have enough food and beverage staff to serve the people the demand or meet the demand. And certainly we were struggling in the initial phase with even getting enough chefs to produce enough kai for our guests. So that was a huge challenge, and in some areas like hospitality is still a challenge for us, getting the right people to do to do the job we need them to do. As I said, Asia hasn't returned significantly as yet, but it's starting to return. So I'll talk about air capacity shortly, and inbound air capacity into our country, because that's actually quite fundamental to what we think is going to have to happen. The other thing we've been able to achieve is ongoing support from the government for NZ Maki operations. That keeps the schools flourishing, keeps all our staff in place, and ensures that we can continue those legacies on safely with a mind on the future. So just what we're seeing going forward from a market outlook, I mentioned to you we've got good forward bookings in the system, and that's hugely encouraging. There is a positive outlook internationally. Most of New Zealand tourism would say that they are seeing good signs. There's good forward booking activity, and there are some headwinds. Most of you will know what those are. It's like the inflation rates around the world, all of those issues that we face here in New Zealand, the world's facing. And, inflation, the war in the Ukraine, all those things are the sort of negative things out there. But one thing we do know about our country is that it's up against a lot of other countries. It's pretty resilient in terms of inbound visitation. It tends to hold up better than most other countries in the world when you're under pressure. And we're only a small part of the international market in the end anyway. And so we know that we've still got pent-up demand out there, and New Zealand still figures highly on the most aspired destination lists when you look at them around the world. New Zealand's right up there and amongst it. So forward bookings are building. The New Zealand dollar is very low. For those of you that have travelled overseas in the last year, you'll realise that the New Zealand dollar is only worth about 60 cents US. That means when Americans and other countries are coming here, they're getting a really good deal. I just went to Hawaii recently, and it's a really bad deal going the other way. It's hell of expensive to go to some of those countries, but for those people flying inbound from Europe, from the UK, from the US, it probably hasn't looked this good for them for so long. So while the airfares may be a bit more expensive getting here, certainly when they're on the ground, they're getting a really good deal. And so, it's plenty there. What we do know is that inbound air capacity is about 95% built back by September this year. So that's inbound air capacity from the various markets where customers come from. What's really good about that is there's some really amazing air capacity coming out of North America, which is probably greater than it was pre-COVID, and those markets are the highest yielding markets that we deal with here and deal with in New Zealand generally. So very strong signs coming out of that market in particular. Having said all that and all the positive stuff, the next phase of the build back, we've kind of got to a certain level. No one's expecting the next phase of the build back won't have its challenges. It will still have challenges. It'll have internal challenges, and there'll be external challenges as well. But we feel we're in a much better state if we compare ourselves to where we were as we went into the summer season and how we feel coming out of it. We feel we're in a much better state to hang in there and get through. Key to that for us has been the people. We made a lot of tourism businesses will lay off staff, during the off season or stand them down. We're not doing that. We're holding on to our staff and using it as an opportunity to train and an opportunity to spend more time with them to ensure that we're delivering the experiences we want to going forward. We've got some challenges, no question about it. Staffing's still there. As you all know, the Rotorua visitor brand, or tourism brand if you like, has taken a bit of a hit during COVID. given all the negativity that Rotorua's received due to things like social housing. That's something we're mindfully aware of. It's not something we've encountered necessarily overseas, so people overseas don't really understand it, or it's not really topical for them, but certainly for a lot of our wholesale customers who are domiciled in New Zealand, they feel it and have experienced some of it. So we're going to have to, as a destination, this is bigger than just Te Puia, we're going to have to really put some focused effort into that and making sure that for the next couple of years we're really pushing forward in that area and going for it. We're going to have to really watch that we don't go back to our old ways as a destination and start discounting back into markets where once you lower your price you can't get back. And in particular reference there, I just mentioned China. You know, we all know what China will do. If you sell your product off at $60 now, you'll be selling it off at $60 in 2 years' time. It's really hard to claw back. So we've really got to learn those lessons from the past and not go back there, because it'll cause us to kind of lose the benefit we've had, you know, from the COVID years, because we will have lost the benefit to reset. Key for this operation and for our people is maintaining our consistency. You have to be fantastically good at what you do consistently 365 days of the year. And that's a huge part of our focus as we come out of COVID, and making sure that we're not getting a lot of variability in our experience, and that people are seeing what we're saying we're delivering, what we say we're going to deliver, the guests get that experience and leave here satisfied. They've spent more time with us, they've got the stories deeper, and they've eaten with us or shopped with us and done all those things that are important for the commercial survival of the operation. Derek, can I have a glass of water, please? Thanks. Weather. Everyone knows we've had a fantastic summer. It's been sunny every day, not. Like anyone, you know, who's living in our country, like any business, we've been certainly noticed the impacts of the weather on our business. We certainly noticed it when Cyclone Gabriel hit around the coastal areas. We saw a quite significant movement and of visitors all around the country. We probably were a beneficiary of that, but certainly the weather is not what it used to be. During peak season, there was a lot of rain. Rain is not necessarily that great for our business. You know, we've got a lot of so a lot of part of our visitor experience is not sheltered, not under roofs. So, you know, people get wet. One of the reasons we've put the people movers on, taking people up and down from the valley, not only from a safety point of view, but to give them shelter from the rain, and on Sundays the heat. So weather, you know, I think all of us involved in this industry are going to have to watch out for this. This is going to, if the science is right, you know, I think we're going to be dealing with more weather events more regularly all year round. So we're going to have to calibrate the organisation and our experiences in and around the fact that we get you know, a bit more weather disruption than historically we ever did. Health and safety, you know, I think health and safety in the geothermal environment or the volcanic environment, you know, when Whakaari occurred in late 2019, you know, and then COVID came pretty soon after, I don't think it probably got, I think, you know, if COVID hadn't occurred, this would be affecting us a lot more now. You know, to put it simply, we used to have hundreds of thousands of visitors going down into a geothermal valley unguided, without any, you know, within any safety system around them other than fencing. You cannot, and certainly I will not, and I know the board feel pretty much the same way, allow that to happen in today's health and safety environment. If Whakaari is going to change a whole lot of things around how we must underpin our health and safety systems going forward. A lot of tourism businesses have been affected, and I think you know, it's highly likely we're going to see some legal changes around it. We've got some serious work we need to do with the village around making sure that we've got the right communication and the right systems in place to mitigate, you know, risk that might relate to geothermal and fire down in the valley in particular. We've also got a lot of work we need to do up top around our schools and right around the site generally to ensure that we maintain safety not only for our visitors but for our staff. And that's a massive undertaking. As I said before, got some global things out there, but we've got to keep an eye on those, but they're not really hitting us too hard at the moment. Some opportunities for us. Our biggest opportunity is just doing what we do really well and being really consistent at it. If we do that, the rest kind of looks after itself. If we do that really well, pick the trade who send people here, the message goes out to the general public, the general travelling public, that we're a fantastic place to visit, and you tend to get the benefit of that. That's what we have to focus on above all else. We've got 2 years where we're saying we're focusing on our core and we're focusing on consistency post-COVID. Because we've changed a lot of things, we've got to make sure those things are embedded into everyone's daily work routines and into the whole way we deliver experiences. Because we're a legacy business and have got a long history of dealing with a lot of the trade out there, they kind of want things the same as they always got them. And so we've encountered some noise around that. We're not relenting in that regard. We're holding to our plan. It's not easy, but it's something that we knew after we'd been through the experiences of COVID that we weren't going to let go of. We'd learned how to deliver and how to operate the business more effectively, and we wanted people leaving here understanding who we were and what we were, rather than leaving thinking we were some kind of place that they just saw some water spout going up. We really did want to make sure that there was a deeper connection with what we do. We've got huge opportunity in the cultural area, particularly in the Maki culture area with cultural projects. We've got a number underway right now and some really interesting pieces in the pipeline. So that's where we do all the community art pieces or the carvings that go overseas, that we accompany the carvings often with a tukuiho exhibition, and Iraia and his team participate heavily in that. Sustainability and things like obviously global warming and conservation are going to become a more integral part of our story, and we want to tell those stories a lot more in a forthright way going forward, because they're important to who we are, what we are, and we want to clip in some value-added experiences along the way. I think we have to, when you look at a business the size and scale of this, you've got to really, as much as you've got to look and do what you do really well, you have to keep an eye on the future as well, and you have to keep an eye on where there's other opportunities to grow. And we've got a number of those opportunities on the site, and we certainly want to explore those a little bit further. We've seen interesting things happen with the advent of COVID with Geyser by Night. Obviously, there's a slightly different nighttime market that we can do more work in. But there's also some really neat stuff we can do in the southern end of the site around conservation, sustainability, and enhancing that environment even more than we've been able to in recent years. So, from a management point of view, the future looks really exciting. I'm incredibly proud to have got through the last 3 years with the team. I'm incredibly grateful for the support that most of you in this room have given us and afforded us over that period. I'm mindfully aware that you got your business back at the toughest possible time, and that was really hard for you to get it back at that time and then not get dividends off a business that pre-COVID was incredibly profitable. And it's our responsibility to make sure you get those dividends back, but also to keep growing the business in the right way. So we've got a really strong future, together, and that's my commitment to it. I love this place. I love what I do here. I love the team I work with, and really enjoy the interchange we have with our community and with the tourism industry. It's been a wonderful. It's been a wonderful experience for me, and I just want to keep that going and growing. So, kia ora everyone, really appreciate it, and there's more to come. Kia ora.
Thanks Tim, and I'm just going to introduce Peter Warport, who's the chair of our Audit and Risk Committee, and Peter's going to take us through the financials over the past period, and Then if there's any questions or comments from the delegates after that around the reports, we can take that after the financials before we move into the dividend.
Okay. All right, kia ora again. I just want to really fill in a bit of the colour surrounding the financials. You've got 3 years of financials there. But before I start in this, I just want to make a comment that the key to the success of any commercial enterprise depends on how the governance unit, the board and the management team react in crisis situations. Business as usual is, if you're knowledgeable, is comparatively simple. It's how people react in a crisis situation. I've experienced 2 major crisis situations in my corporate career. The first one was within a few weeks of my retirement after being 8 years in the chair of an organisation called Crop and Food Research based in Christchurch. We lost 7 of our senior executive team in an air crash. 2 of them survived, remarkably. The plane hit trees just short of Christchurch runway and crashed. We rebuilt that team by promoting from within the organisation. I'll always be really proud of that. The second such crisis situation was what occurred when COVID hit us, and we went from a manahiri run rate of roughly $500,000 a year. Overnight we went from that to 0. And we had to face the tough decision of putting roughly 120 people out of work. We clearly didn't know at that stage whether we would survive that particular crisis. Nobody did. But that's when the old saying, when the going gets tough, the tough get going, that's when that was exemplified by how our board, your board, and your management team, how they reacted to that situation. And so it's my pleasure to perhaps put a bit of colour into some of the numbers. You'll also may be wondering why it is you've got three years of annual reports all in one hit. Not unusual and not wouldn't be normally regarded as the best practice in terms of governance and management. However, the Vesting Act required that when the assets were transferred from the Crown to you as the owners, that the assets had to be transferred at what was described as being fair market value. Now, what the hell is fair market value when you're closed and the whole globe is being wrecked by a pandemic of mammoth proportions, proportions that haven't been seen since the Great Plague. What you normally do when you're the technique for determining fair value is normally requires discounted cash flow valuations to be undertaken, fair value on the actual day of the transfer of the assets. Now, a DCF valuation, for those of you who have had anything to do with corporate valuations, is a technically challenging exercise on the best of days. If you overlay that with the complications of COVID, meant that the process of making or determining those opening values was extremely demanding. All the normal foundations of a DCF valuation have been turned on their heads. And in fact, at one point we attempted to get external expert valuers to look at it, and none of them would touch it. So we decided that we had to work on it because we had to establish those values. If you didn't establish those values, you couldn't complete an audit for the year ending 31st of March 2021. Little did we know that it was going to go on even longer than that. So we set out doing the technical valuation calculation work internally. And Tess and Kirsty and the team in our finance department did an amazing job. We did have some external assistance. I have some significant experience in DCF valuations over the years. And we just got stuck into it and had a work list that was hundreds of items long, and we started at the top and we started to work to the bottom. The end result of the valuation that we did had to withstand any challenges that we might receive from both our auditors and from Inland Revenue. Because those valuations, the valuation of those assets, determined what your opening depreciation was going to be. Very important to you as shareholders. It took us a lot longer than we obviously anticipated, but all the challenges from the auditors were satisfied, and the accounts for the 8 months to the 31st of March 2021 and the 12 months ending 2022 achieved unqualified audit opinions. We then had to complete the audit for the year ending 31 March 2023 and got an unqualified audit for those. And then having done that, we then had to take the whole ball of wax along to IRD and say, is this all okay by you? Now, IRD in their usual inimitable style said, yeah, yeah, looks good, yeah. But would give it, of course, they never give you any guarantee, and but we got a pretty solid feedback from IRD that they were not going to argue with one of the top audit firms in the world, Ernst & Young, who worked with us in getting the valuations. So where we ended up was a pretty damn good result, but that's the reason why you're getting three lots of annual accounts all in one hit. And as Derek said, that might be a relief to you because it's at least 2 AGMs you don't have to sit through. Now, could we bring up the first slide there, please? Now, I'm a picture person, so to hell with all the numbers and the tables and the accountant's arcane language. I like some pictures. So this picture, you can see the impact of COVID immediately on all the financial facets. When we were at where that first dotted line is on the left, just imagine that was one side of a river. And from there, we were trying to build a bridge across to the other dotted line. We couldn't see the other side of the river. We didn't know how far away it was. We didn't know how deep the water was underneath the bridge. We could see some fins swimming around, so we knew there was a bloody lot of sharks down there. So we started building this bridge. Now, you can imagine the complexity of that task and on occasions, the leaps of faith that the management and the board had to take in that. There were no guarantees we were going to get that bridge across the river. And we could have ended up with a bridge, no more building material, no more builders, but it was about 2/3 away across the river. Anyway, good story, we made it. We made it because of the hard work of your team, management and governance, and we made it with the assistance of government. We shouldn't underestimate the value, and us and others. I mean, we were, you know, you will have heard of the wage subsidies and such like. Government, it's fair to say that we probably wouldn't have gotten to the other side of the river had we not received assistance. And many companies didn't, of course. So those are the key parameters. You can see that everything dived down, and then gradually, as the COVID picture became more clear, and some of the constraints rendered by COVID were relaxed, and business, well, first of all, domestic business started to pick up. But we only ever got to a run rate, or a run rate from the domestic market of less than 50,000 people, visitors from the domestic market. And we needed about 90,000 just to break even. Okay, so we were not going to make it, we were never going to make it on our own from the domestic traffic. So that's where government support became very important to us. And then, of course, came the period where the COVID picture became more clear, and we started to get glimpses of the other side of the river and glimpses of how wide this gulf was. Some of the domestic markets started to open up. Australia opened up first and then closed almost the moment after it opened. And you know, this is a hell of an environment to be managing a business in. Anyway, we gradually have come away in that situation and are now, hang on, let me get rid of that. But we were all, then of course there were other things that started to prevail in the market. As we were coming out of the depths of COVID, we were like everybody, experienced labour shortages. We're still experiencing labour shortages because I think it comes as a surprise to many of us how reliant our economy is to, particularly in the tourism market, people coming in from overseas, seasonal work, and filling some of those sort of jobs. We just couldn't get skills. We couldn't get, you know, people like chefs or people in the food and beverage industry. That was a real godsend for us in terms of getting some revenue back. We had great difficulty in getting staff. Then the cost increases and the general inflationary experience that we had. But we carefully managed that, and we carefully guarded our cash. Could we have the next slide, please? No? Cash is important to any business on any day, but in tight business conditions, cash is king. Not enough of it will kill you. I've never had any problem dealing with too much, but if you don't have enough of it, you can die very, very quickly. And as you can see, our cash position from a trading perspective got into negative territory. And it was, at that time, it was our reserves that we'd had going into the COVID period. It was the fact that we didn't have any debt going into the COVID period, and that was, those two things were the saviour. And then gradually, as I say, with the grey bit there was the loan that we took from the government that we never used. We held it in a bank account. It was an amazing comfort blanket for us behind our back. If you know, if the mucky stuff hit the fan again and markets closed, we had that as a backstop. But we never drew 1 cent of that cash, and we repaid that, the whole lot of that back to government just a couple of weeks ago. Trading conditions started to improve, and you can see the blue block is becoming more dominant. So the the essence of all that is that, in summary, I'm really delighted to be able to report to you that your business has emerged from a very, very dark place in our history. And we're back into what looks to be clearing skies and with a bit of sunshine ahead. There's a lot more to do, but we, as I say, I'm pleased to report to you that we have built the bridge. There's still some painting to be done and some bolts to be tightened, but we can at least get a bicycle across the bridge now. What we've got to do is we've got to get that into a 4-lane highway, and we'll all be laughing. So, as I say, there's yet more to do to keep growing back, and to lock in our aspirations of sustained wealth generation, while remaining true to the kaupapa Māori that guides us, of a sustainable Māori-owned business that we can all celebrate and be proud of. Thank you.
Kia ora, Peter. Thank you for that. And some great pictures which really tell a really compelling story. So we've had the reports, my report, the CEO's report, the financial report. Just an opportunity, I guess, for the delegates, if there's any questions or comments they wish to make. Otherwise, I'd entertain a motion around the approval, if they're happy, of the 3 annual reports. Any questions, comments from the delegates? Otherwise, somebody like to... Malcolm?
Derek, I'd like to congratulate Peter and for the effort that he put into this deal and bringing this all together and getting those accounts over their line, not only with the auditors but with IRD, and that was a major effort, so our congratulations.
Stand up, ladies.
Tautoko mātou tūhaurangi o Whakarewara. Donna sits here on behalf of Ngāti Wāhia. I sit here on behalf of tūhaurangi o Whakarewara. I tautoko everything that Malcolm has said. I really want to acknowledge the expertise in bringing this financial summary to everybody today. But I want to acknowledge Tim and the financial Tess and Kirsty. They had the hard job there in finance to put all this together. You know, you hear that we were thinking about going into the loan that the government gave to us, but we saw it from a iwi point of view that it was better to leave it alone and see if we can get out of this difficulty, which I'm pleased to say that we didn't touch that loan from the government, because we would have had to pay that back at a real high rate of interest. And for us in Tūhaurangi o Wai, o Whakarewarewa, along with Wāhiao and of course Hurunga, Tai o Tū and Ngāti Te Kahu, that would have been a burden on us. Not so much with Pukaro o Ruawhata, because of their standing as Māori Status Authority. We didn't have that, so we didn't want to delve into that loan from the government, and we're glad that we did that. So Tess, you and your team along with Peter, thank you very much. Tēnā koutou.
I think it would be appropriate, Tess, if you could stand and acknowledge, and also just just want to acknowledge Tess, because Tess is retiring shortly, and you know, with Kura Clive, these are 2 people that have had fundamental involvement in this organisation for an extended period, and just want to talk about, I guess, what everybody's saying around Tess and the team. They've really done a huge amount of work, actually, Tess, so just to acknowledge you and Kirsty and others, but it's absolutely fantastic. So,
Tēnei au he uri o Purunga-Te-Rangi o Te Kahu, i mihi atu ki a kōtou. Tēnei te mihi ki ngā koeke o Ngāti Purunga-Te-Rangi ngā te whaiatu, ngā te kahi mai nei, whakarongo ki ngā kōrero i tēnei ata. Tēnei te mihi aroha kia pōta katoa, ngā mihi ki kia kōrua e whanaka i hoki. Kōrua e te aki nei o te mātou kreme, mā te mana ki ke tinga. E hapu tāki engari mā tātou katoa e nei mea e tutuki. Thank you on behalf of the HTK Te Puia Trust, so that's the trust that represents the interests of Purunga Te Rangi, Kaiatu and Te Kahu. Thank you to the board for your leadership through these hard times, through your governance and vision to steer us through this unprecedented position. Thank you, Tim, to you and your team, those that are here, and also those that were lost along the way. Many of us have whānau here who couldn't make it through the hard times of COVID, and we know this was a really tough time for many people on the team, those that have left, and for those in our whānau. So on behalf of the HTK Te Puia Trust, Pauline, Dawari, who can't be here, we want to acknowledge the incredibly difficult work, the hard decisions that were taken to get us through this. So ngā mihi nui kia koutou, and also thank you to Alex, our accountant. He's one of the ones who has slaved away in the background when we have had no income over the years, but has been committed to supporting the free hapu as we take on this journey. So on behalf of all of us, ngā mihi kia koutou. Thank you.
I wonder if one of the delegates is happy to move the approval of the 3 annual reports. Kia ora, thank you. As your seconder, welcome. Any discussion? Put the motion. All those in favour, please say aye. Aye. No. Motion carried. Now, the exciting part, the financial distributions to the limited partners. And so if I can call on Peter to come and present this.
Gee, I get all the good jobs. You might have heard the rumours around that we've done good, and I can say to you that the Board of Directors of Te Puia NZ Maki Limited Partnership has resolved to make a distribution totalling $3,246,000 to the limited partners in line with their respective partnership interests. In arriving or in preparation for that resolution, the requirements of the Companies Act were met in terms of solvency considerations and the signing of a solvency certificate. These dividends will be paid on or before the 31st of August this year. We will have to, just immediately prior to making those actual payments, we'll have to redo the solvency certification again, but we don't anticipate, unless Tess retires and takes all the money with her, we're not anticipating that there will be any major concerns. So can I have the last slide there? Now that's numerically that's the situation. Those are the equity positions in each of the years, and essentially in round numbers the distribution of 3.2 million or 3.25 million will be roughly 16 million to 1.6. I was speaking in advance in the future. So 1.6 million to Wahiao, Tuharangi, Whakarewarewa, and the remaining 800,000 to each of the other two trusts. So those payments will be made, as I say, on or before the 31st of August. The the sort of reason for some little delay there is that we don't want to break some term deposits that we have and lose some penalty in that break. So it is my great pleasure to formally declare that distribution to you, the owners of this company, and the board and management, I'm sure, join me in hoping that there will be many more such announcements in the future. Thank you.
So the fantastic news, I think, and just want to again acknowledge all our team, Tess, Peter and the board around the work that's been done around solvency tests, around looking forward for the business in terms of capital requirements for the future and being satisfied relative to where it sits in terms of that distribution that's been given on a sustainable basis, if you like, moving forward. So thank you for that. Just leaves us really with confirmation of our auditor, and EY has been our auditor, so I'd like one of the limited partners to move the appointment of our auditor, EY. Thank you, Malcolm, and a seconder for that. Thank you, Dr. Ken. Any discussion? I'll put the motion. All those in favour, please say aye. Aye. Motion carried. Which really brings us to the end conclusion of our inaugural AGM, or the 3 AGMs in one, if you like. And just would invite all of the representatives here, all the owners here, to pātaka kai to follow following this AGM. But if I can call on Dr. Ken for a closing karakia. Kia ora, Alec. Nice to have you with us. And Tupara, I think you're still there somewhere as well. So.
Me tiu tātou ki te waeta tērā himene whakāria mai. Whakāria mai tori peka ki au te aho mai aro hei kona te tiro atu ai ora mate hei au koe no ai whakaria te aho mai aroto i te po hei kona titi roa tu ai ora mate hei au koe no ai kia tau kia tātu katoa te atu whai tō tātou auriki ai hukaraiti. Me te aroa te atua te whiwika taitangi ki te wairua tapu ake, āmene, kia ora tātou. Ka pai. Good AGM, eh? Yeah. Very good.